Welcome back, everyone. I hope people took advantage of the networking session, made some valuable connections, visited the booths. We really encourage you to take advantage of the fact that we brought leaders from across Western Canada together at this session. So I'm super excited about what we are about to have because now we're moving into our true Western Canadian presentations where we have companies from Manitoba, Alberta, and British Columbia presenting. And to introduce and moderate this session, I'd like to introduce Rob Stoddart, President and CEO of BioAlberta. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Wendy. As you know, the theme for this session is diagnostic, digital health, medical devices, and medical technology. Happy to introduce to you 5 companies that will be pitching. First company up will be Diagnostic Inc., and presenting will be their Chief Operating Officer, Catalina Vasquez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please let me know if you can hear me and see the slides.
You're good.
You're good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name is Catalina Vasquez. I am co-founder and chief operating officer of Diagnostic, and I am very happy to be here today, looking at you and presenting what we think is a disruptive technology that promises to revolutionize precision health. Diagnostics. So we are a clinical stage precision health company with 5 active clinical trials in 5 different fields: prostate cancer, bladder cancer, cardiac, immuno-oncology, and machine learning. We have a novel precision health technology platform that uses machine learning and extracellular vesicles to bring clarity to healthcare decisions. To date, we have raised $5.75 million in equity and $3.5 million in non-dilutive funding, and we are raising $30 million in a Series A round to sales launch for prostate cancer tests in North America, support our IVD FDA application, and fund commercialization activities for clinical programs. Extracellular vesicles is an exploding field right now, and we believe they're the next generation of biomarker. And with this table, I'm showing you why we believe that. So at current platforms for extracellular vesicle characterization rely on isolating the extracellular vesicles, ultracentrifugating, or filtrating. We believe that all size matter, and for that, we use a technology for which we study all the extracellular vesicles that are available in a sample. Through a very minimally invasive test. It's a simple blood test, and we collect very small blood sample. It is available for multiple diseases and can be used in any biofluids. There are millions and millions available in literally microliters of blood, and we can detect them very dynamically. But what are extracellular vesicles? So there are little pieces that the cells shed as means of communication. And beyond the message they are set to transmit, they also contain a lot of information from the mother cell. As I mentioned before, they're present at large numbers in blood and urine. So we use a proprietary microflow cytometry platform to detect and characterize millions of these EVs in minutes. And right now, we are located at DynaLife Medical Labs here in Edmonton, where medical lab technologies run our tests to ensure clinical rigidity, rigor, and quality for the test. But how does our platform work? So basically, we take biofluids from the patients. We incubate it with different probes to detect the biomarkers that are associated with the organ, the state of the organ, so if there is a disease or not. And we combine it with clinical information, generating millions and millions of data points that are there, analyzed by machine learning to generate a disease prediction model. And so with that, we generate EV fingerprints for disease. And our pipeline has high value opportunities. So we work both in the biomarker assay platform, which is the one that I just described, but we also utilize a machine learning platform where we do data integration and analysis to identify the risk of patients having a particular disease by only using clinical data. So as you can see, we have multiple tests in the pipeline, with prostate cancer being the most advanced. Because it is the most advanced, I'm going to present you with a significant unmet medical need. The screening for prostate cancer causes unnecessary harm. It starts with a blood test called prostate-specific antigen, or PSA in short form, but up to 80% of these PSAs are false positives. And these false positive tests eventually end in a biopsy, where 12 needles are inserted through the prostate to collect little pieces of tissue to do the diagnosis of the disease. This is painful, uncomfortable, and comes with the risk of infection. But also, more importantly, most of the prostate biopsies done end up being negative. So these patients did not have cancer. And the ones that turn out to be positive, they have what we call an indolent prostate cancer. So it's a cancer that does not need treatment. So we need tests that can accurately and minimally invasively predict prostate cancer in patients, but also tell the doctors and the patients if they A, need a biopsy, and B, if they need treatment. And because we feel so strongly that this is needed, so we set on to validate our platform to see the accuracy of the test for prostate cancer. So our test is called Clarity DX Prostate. We validated initially in a small cohort of 377 patients in Alberta, in which our test was 330% more accurate than PSA alone. And then we went on and did another clinical validation study in North America, where this data is for the first interim analysis of 910 participants. These samples have been run in DynaLife, and we still have a test that is 220% more accurate than PSA alone. I want to share with you that right now we reached patient 1,500 in this cohort, and that we are running the interim analysis for that as we speak. With these results, we're very, very excited, and we are now moving to the market. And this is our strategy for market penetration. So we want to offer the test as a reflex test for PSA, with a total addressable market in North America only over $1 billion. And what we propose is that after a repeat high PSA, instead of going straight for the biopsy, we run our Clarity DX Prostate in DynaLife. And with that, we inform patients and doctors if they need to undergo the biopsy and if they need to be treated for prostate cancer. And sales are going to start in Canada in 2022, in the second half of the year. So we have been working very hard during the past 5 years and have reached some key milestones. In 2017, we ran the initial 377 patient cohort. We secured our partnership with DynaLife for the clinical validation study, and now for commercialization with DynaLife. We have met with the FDA and Health Canada for them to vet our clinical trial, run a stability study, have recruited the first set of the 2,800 clinical study. But with this initial cohort, now we are ready to start offering the test commercially. And this is where we are right now. So we are selling the test as a laboratory developed test, initially in Canada, but followed very closely by the United States in our own CLIA lab. So first in partnership with DynaLife, but also is in our own CLIA lab in 2022, 2023. While we continue recruiting the remaining of the cohort to submit the data to Health Canada and the FDA for approval. And then in the meantime, we're also working on getting reimbursement. So we're seeking an investment of Series A, $30 million to continue doing this exercise that I just explained. But in addition to that, we also would like to continue advancing on our clinical development pipeline for the products of Clarity DX bladder cancer, immuno-oncology, and cardiac disease. So in summary, we are raising money, Series A, to launch the prostate cancer test in North America, to support our IVD FDA application, and to fund commercialization activities for clinical programs. Obviously, we would not have reached the point we are at without our team. So we are very, very lucky to have the support of our board of directors. Is a very balanced board where we have people who with expertise in commercialization, expert CEOs, business experts, regulatory experts, and clinical experts. And then in addition to that, we also have a team where 2 of our executives have been previous CEOs of companies with successful exits and licensing deals, scientific, technical, clinical, regulatory, and quality personnel. Some of them have been in working in other in vitro diagnostic tests or diagnostic tests from the inception until they reach the commercial market. And that will be it for today. So please let me know if you have questions. Oh, we don't have questions today, so I stop sharing. And thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Catalina. And you get to see why Dr. Lewis and the Gnostics were the 2018 winner of BioAlberta's Scientific Achievement and Innovation Award. So it's good to see the progression in a very short period of time. Thank you, Catalina. Next up is Lumica Health Inc. Tom Douglas, who's their Chief Operating Officer and Acting CEO, will give the presentation. Tom, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. So hi, everybody. Tom Douglas, CEO at Lumica Health. And we're actually from Saskatchewan. I know Rob and Wendy mentioned the other prairie provinces, and I'd be remiss to say that we're actually over in Saskatchewan, Treaty 4 territory. So I want to talk to you guys today about virtual care. And listen, I know there's a lot of players in this space. I know it's complex. There's a lot of money already in. And in fact, I had the good fortune of presenting a similar pitch deck to one of the presenters here today, Ann Woods, about a month ago. And she actually joked after the presentation when she first saw another virtual care company. That was her immediate thought, oh no, another virtual care company. But I'm going to show you guys why we're different today. I'm going to show you how we're differentiated. I'm going to show you where the market's driving, what factors are pushing it there, and how we're going to capitalize on that at Lumica, and obviously why you should invest. So, I mean, telehealth's a big market already, 90 billion in the US in 2021, and it's going to grow over 600 billion by 2028. So the big problem is actually pretty simple. Telehealth is super convenient for patients, but if you're a provider, it's actually been a bit of a pain. In fact, last year, it was about 70% of the virtual consults in Canada were actually over the phone. So it tells us that a lot of providers are opting to do their virtual consults over the telephone as opposed to video technology. And in this space of virtual care, there's 2 primary types of players. So you've got one, companies providing software like Lumica, 2 providers, and then you've got the large virtual clinics, you know, the medical service providers like Babylon, Maple, Dialogue. So more than half of the market is actually these large service providers, these walk-ins. So it ties into this first major problem of, you know, why are docs using the telephone and not virtual care tools? And it comes down to them. A lot of them are really clunky. They're inconvenient. They're not connected to the doc's calendars. Physicians end up waiting for patients as opposed to patients waiting on physicians. And they end up playing tech support on the call. And so you can't really blame doctors for not wanting to use inefficient tools. Docs really, at the end of the day, they want to spend their day patient-facing as much time as possible. So they want to provide as much care as possible. They want to hit their revenue goals. And telephone isn't great for that either. I mean, they just chose telephone because it was a little bit easier than some of the clunky tools they had available to them. But what's happening on the phone is pretty simple, and I'll give you an example. So I've got an appointment. It's at 3 o'clock with my family doc. It's a phone appointment, but he doesn't call me till 3:30 because he's a doctor. And now I'm picking up my kids from school at 3:30. And I missed that call. So I call back. I get the front end reception. She reschedules me, or he reschedules me for tomorrow. And now we've both just wasted time. So telephone isn't great either because it's not auditable either. I mean, governments and payers don't like it because they don't even know if a call actually happened. So the biggest problem, again, virtual care is slowing doctors down. So the solution to that is actually pretty simple. You build a tool that takes the efficiencies of real life waiting rooms and puts that in a virtual practice. So that what we've done is we've found a way to allow physicians to spend more time patient facing, and no other vendors really spent this much time and effort on this pain point. So a doc can come in here and they can see that the patient is ready and waiting. They're already in the video call room. So they're never going to jump into a video meeting again. And I'm sure it's happened to everyone here in the age of virtual. You jump into a video room and you wait 10 minutes for the other person to join on. Well, 10 minutes, that's an entire appointment. That might be 2 appointments for a doctor. So here they know when the patient's ready. They can prompt the patient in advance. There are quick messages that them or an office admin person can send, like, hey, I'm running 10 minutes late. Or the office admin can jump in the chat and manage the expectations. The doctor's going to be about 30 minutes behind today. And so the physician can always jump into the next blue consult, the next ready patient. So they spend as much time patient-facing as possible. So that was a huge advancement and a big reason why Lumika has been successful. The next problem in the market, so I mentioned there's two types of providers. You've got the service providers, the large virtual walk-ins, and you've got the software providers. Well, in Canada, I mean, we're probably all aware that we have an unattached patient problem. It's as high as 1 in 10 patients on average, and then 2 in 10 in some provinces, like my home province here in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and some places in the Maritimes, it's a little bit higher. So where that ties into virtual care is, where did these people go during the pandemic? Right? They didn't have a family doc, they're unattached, so they went to virtual walk-ins. Well, virtual walk-ins aren't necessarily favored or seen well by the regulatory agencies across Canada, the regulatory bodies. So in all these provinces on the screen here, there have been regulations put forth to limit the ability of these virtual only clinics. So what that is to say is that the market is driving towards virtual care being the purview of family doctors. They want virtual care to supplement in-person care. They don't want virtual only clinics. So providers, payers, governments, and what have you, are willing to invest money into tools that empower brick and mortar infrastructure. So it's a problem that costs a lot of money to Canadians. It's $200 million annually, and if you break that down by the 38 million unattached patients in Canada, it's $53 a year per patient. So we thought we would work on a solution to figure out how to attach these patients using virtual care. So I'll tell you a quick story. We started surveying doctors. We'd call them up. We'd say, hey, are you accepting new patients? They said, no way. We'd ask them, can you take on 20? They'd say, yeah. That's interesting. So we'd survey another doc. Same thing. Are you taking on new patients? No way. Could you take on 10? Yeah, I can take on 10. And what we found overall was that in the market, physicians had an adverse reaction to advertising, because if they advertised they were accepting new patients, they'd flood the front end, they'd have way too many patients, and front end's already one of their biggest bottlenecks. So we built them a metered intake. And what a metered intake means is a doc goes in based on their availability. They say, I can fit 10 more patients in. I can take on 10 more patients in my practice. And they're going to show up on a map where patients can go and find a family doc that's looking to take on patients. And when they hit their quota, it pulls them off the map. So that was a huge advantage and a huge sell feature to governments. So we've outpaced our competition because of building these features to make video faster than a phone call, to attach unattached patients to family docs, and we built a really great patient experience. And this is a busy chart. You can find it in my booth later if you want to go through this. But by taking what we had learned, because Lumika was originally a service provider, we were one of the bad guys. We were one of the walk-ins. And we took what we learned. We had a great patient experience. In fact, patients lamented when we shut down our walk-in clinic. I'm still getting emails to this day that they wish our walk-in was still running. But we took all of that and repackaged it as a SaaS offering. And it paid off. We won. So we recently secured a landmark contract in our home province for 3,500 licenses. That's the minimum, up to 5,000 provider licenses. So it's a SaaS model, licenses per month. And that puts our ARR up, around 1.2 to 1.4 million a year. And we're also geared up to actually win other provincial contracts across Canada. We've been certified by the InfoWay Canada RFPQ. So we're poised to scale this technology across Canada, but also into the US. And multiple RFPs will quickly propel us well beyond $100 million valuation. And this is where the market is driving. So for us, strategic targets are the Prairie provinces, the West, as well as the Maritimes, who have an unattached patient problem that's fairly significant. We also have a strategic partner in our sister company, Haztech, in the US, who operates medical clinics in Colorado, Texas, and Nevada. So that'll be our entryway there. And we're also working on a lot of the new tech. I mean, virtual care is the start, but remote patient monitoring and further interoperability work is where we're headed. So what we're looking for is 4 million. I know I got 5 million up here. I've secured the first million. I'm looking for 4 million for 20% of the company. And where that money is going to go is to fund our expansion in the US. We have to build more integrations into provincial health systems to promote interoperability. And that's an expensive thing to do, but it's important. Health systems have been screaming for this for the last decade or more. And so we need to ramp up our development team so we can penetrate those markets. So that's it for me today. Thank you, and hopefully talk to you at the booth.
Thanks for the presentation, Tom. Very interesting way to manage care and manage physicians. Be interesting to see your progress. Next up, Cubresa. Please let me introduce Manjari Murthy, Director of Product Management. Manjari, over to you.
Thanks so much, Rob. Let me just share my screen here. Give me just a moment. And great presentations so far as well. It's great to see you all again. There we go. My apologies. I'm having a little bit of trouble here. There we go. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manjari Murthy, and I'm the Director of Product Management at Cubresa. We are a Winnipeg-based medical devices company. And today I'm really excited to talk to you about our new medical device, the Brain PET for Alzheimer's disease imaging. We all know that Alzheimer's is a devastating disease. Over 55 million adults suffer from Alzheimer's worldwide, and it levies a staggering economic toll, over $1.3 trillion by some estimates. And tragically, 1 in 3 seniors will die of Alzheimer's or related dementia. Clearly, this is a very present concern in our aging society. But unfortunately, major gaps exist in the care of adults 65 and over due to the lack of adequate and timely screening for and therapy guidance in Alzheimer's disease. Physicians have limited access to tools to treat and assess patients with Alzheimer's disease. In addition to MRI scanning and various other imaging modalities, as well as blood testing, doctors generally can only manage patients' symptoms. And in addition to tracking their clinical care, there is very little that can actually help a patient alleviate certain symptoms and to get better, basically. And unfortunately, the gaps in these abilities of the currently used modalities as part of the standard of care can lead to miss or later diagnosis, which can lead to poorer health outcomes. As a result of this, patient management is often reactive. In addition to clinical management of symptoms and monitoring by the clinical team, a lot of patient care is based on caregiver work, as well as community-based care programs and care planning, especially in the later stages of a patient's disease. And as I mentioned before, medical management, although that's often targeted towards symptom relief. However, there is hope. Many therapeutics and disease-modifying drugs are being released into the market that are emerging as part of a changing landscape of Alzheimer's. And it's widely accepted that application of these therapeutics earlier in disease course can lead to better outcomes. This points to the importance of screening. Early and accurate identification of Alzheimer's is of paramount importance to improve health outcomes of older adults. It is estimated that in the US alone, over 88 million adults would receive screening for Alzheimer's disease, and over 70 million of them would be screened had they had access to adequate technology to do so. And this is where PET-MR and PET-CT come in. So PET-MR and PET-CT are among the best ways to screen, stage, and guide therapy for Alzheimer's disease. PET imaging lets you look at molecular dynamics in the brain, and MR and PET and CT allow you to look at structures. So when you put those two together, you're able to look at what's happening in the brain and where it's happening in real time. I'm not going to go through this entire document with you, but suffice to say that PET and structural imaging are clearly better across almost all parameters compared to competitive technologies, including CSF sampling and retinal imaging. With this in mind, Cubresa leveraged its extensive expertise in PET imaging to develop the revolutionary Cubresa Brain PET. The Brain PET is the world's first removable PET insert for an MRI scanner built specifically for use with MRIs that are pre-existing. It is 1/7 the cost of a whole body PET MR scanner. It is removable, as I said before, requiring minimal renovations, and has extraordinarily high performance. This is an image of the Brain PET on the bed of an MRI scanner. A patient would put their head into the head holder here, and the cylinder, which contains the PET ring as well as the integrated MR coil, would slide over the patient's head, and the entire unit would slide into the bore of the MR scanner, very much in the way that a regular head coil would slide into an MR scanner during a regular brain scan. The brain PET can also be integrated with the CT scanner, so it can fit right on the bed of a CT patient bed, and it is similarly beneficial to the receiving site, so low price accessory, minimal renovations, and so on. Early images of the brain PET have shown that we're able to resolve objects as small as 2 millimeters in diameter, which is the size of an early amyloid plaque in Alzheimer's disease. This can be the difference between diagnosing disease early and accurately and starting treatments, thereby improving outcomes, or identifying disease too late and potentially not being able to treat effectively. The brain PET can be fit seamlessly into the pre-existing standard of clinical care for patients with Alzheimer's or query Alzheimer's. Early identification of the disease using a screening product would allow clinical teams to be guided in their follow-up procedures. MRI scans are already part of the standard of care for patients with Alzheimer's and query Alzheimer's. Therefore, incorporation of brain PET into those MRI scans would just be quite seamless. The brain PET could help to guide therapies that are best suited for a patient and monitor the effectiveness of said therapies, and importantly, to detect any adverse effects that might require the guidance of an alternative that would better suit that particular patient. And crucially, PET scanning for Alzheimer's and dementias is actually covered by a lot of healthcare systems as well as insurance companies, so it's reimbursable. The brain PET itself is well positioned against commercial competitors. The Cubresa brain PET is the only commercial PET insert for an MRI scanner, but it goes against some smaller competitors, the Positrigo Neura Aleph and the Oncovision Care My Brain, which are PET-only PET scanners, and the Siemens Biograph MMR and GE Signa PET MR, which are whole body PET MR scanners. Again, I'm not going to go through the entire table, but as you can see, the brain PET is superior across almost all parameters compared to these competitors. And Cubresa itself has been a world leader in PET inserts for MRI scanners for over 10 years. We were founded in 2011, and over the subsequent 11 years, we've been granted 4 US patents and have 5 patents awaiting approval and 5 in progress. We've successfully commercialized 5 products, showing that we can take products from concept to commercialization with great success. We've already received 5 purchase orders, memoranda of understanding, letters of intent, or expressions of interest in the brain PET from such leading institutions as Barrow Neurological Institute in Arizona and Lawson Health Research Institute here in Canada. And we also have at least 10 excited prospects in the pipeline, early innovators who are chomping at the bit to get access to this new brain PET. As we await our clinical approvals, we're going to target the clinical brain research market in North America. We've identified at least 678 candidate sites within North America alone, which total a value of $1.6 billion. In 3 years, when the market has matured somewhat and we have all of our clinical approvals, we will start to enter the clinical screening and therapy guidance markets in Canada, in the US, and eventually in the more broader in the broader world. So we've identified in just North America a total addressable market of over 4,000 candidate sites, totaling a market value of $9.6 billion. We also have a very robust regulatory plan in place. This is going to be in keeping with our sales volume expansion as well as our geographical distribution of the system. So we plan to have a Health Canada medical device license and an FDA 510(k) in place by Q2 of 2024 and a full CE mark approval by Q4 of 2024. The economic benefits of the brain PET to an acquiring site are clear. The cost to a client when it comes to acquisition of the capital equipment, customization, accessories, and service and warranty over 10 years would be about $2.68 million. But if you take into account the increased volume of scans that can be achieved as a result of the brain PET's high performance, the increased number of scans per year, and the increased revenue that would be achieved as a result of increasing the number of scans, a candidate site doing regular brain scanning could expect to pay the brain PET off in under 3 years. So in this current round, we are seeking some bridge funding, $2 to $5 million in equity investment, looking to close this round in September 2022. And we're going to use this money to leverage additional funds and federal grants, tax credits, and subsidies. And this is going to go towards increasing our commercialization and marketing efforts, as well as ramping up our operations in preparation for clinical entry and some R&D work to make sure that we are able to keep at the forefront of PET technology in this space. This is ahead of a Series A ask in 2023 of $15 to $25 million. As a company, we are extraordinarily well positioned to launch the BrainPad into commercial success. We have over 60 years collectively of experience in the medical devices sector and have expertise in such wide-ranging fields as software development, biomedical engineering, business development, neuroscience, the list goes on. So in summary, Keybrace is raising $2 to $5 million in dilutive funding to advance the brain PET, and we will revolutionize screening therapy guidance in Alzheimer's disease. We hope you join us as we continue on this exciting journey. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mandri. Great presentation. Moving on to the next presenter, please welcome Neurara Biotech Inc., Dr. Pierre Vadeness, CEO and founder. Over to you, Pierre.
Thank you, Rob. All right, you see my screen now, I believe?
All good.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks everyone for having us here today. Really appreciate it. My name is Pierre Vadeness. I'm one of the co-founder and the CEO of Neurara, company based in Calgary. Many of you have heard of heart pacemakers and all these implants that really save thousands and thousands of lives. But one other thing that is even more futuristic and that more and more people have started to hear over the last years were brain implants. And so when you look at the success of brain implants that are put in so many people today, like every day, brain implants are not there yet, even though they actually provide a lot of hope for patients suffering from Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, depression, addiction. So many studies are actually showing the same thing over and over, that we can actually treat those patients with those brain implants. So, you know, tons of hope for those patients. But when you look at the results of why do we actually don't see those implants more often implanted in patients? Of course, it is an invasive surgery, but we do tons of invasive surgery already for the brain. When you think about tumor resection, when you think about stroke, etc. So why are brain implants not there yet? Well, if you look at how they function, they're actually quite blunt. Those devices stimulate the brain on a very regular basis without really listening to the brain first before stimulating it. They actually stimulate the brain constantly. And over time, that of course affects the brain and the ability for the device to function and communicate properly with the brain. And then second, the brain is a much more complex organ than the heart. And so as a result, we don't really know always where to put the electrodes for both recording and stimulation in the brain. As a result, when you see the efficacy rate of those devices, it's estimated that over time they work in 50% of the cases. So when you think about a very expensive surgery, a surgery that also of course has risk, that works in 1 patient out of 2, we quickly understand why it is still seen as a last resort solution. And that is basically what we solve. So what we have developed are proprietary electrodes that capture brain activity at a much higher resolution than traditional devices. They fit into an existing surgical procedure, called intracranial electrodes. And the signal we record are so fine that we can actually start to see biomarkers. We can actually start to map the patient's brain at resolutions that not only allows the neurologist to finally see where to position such electrodes, but also what type of stimulation to provide based on what they record. And so that's where we start to talk about smart brain implants and bringing basically brain implant to the same level as heart pacemakers are today. That ultimately allows us to do better neuromodulation and listen to the brain first, again, before we stimulate. What is our advantage? Well, over the years, Neurara has developed those sensors, and we have demonstrated in multiple cases that they outperform the clinical gold standard out there. We actually conducted a study with our partners, Fleury Institute and the Bionic Institute in Australia, where we still have ongoing other study going. And we have demonstrated that the sensors that we developed can even capture seizure activity a few minutes before there's actually a full burnout seizures, providing even more possibilities when it comes to stimulating the brain before actual event happens. We have a white paper that is on our website that you can find. We have patents, of course, around this. And out of those studies, we actually generated a lot of traction with strategics in the space. So today, we are under NDA with quite a few companies out there, mainly in North America, Some of those companies are really the world leaders when it comes to neuromodulation or brain mapping. And we're in discussion with them for some project or down the line, potentially an acquisition. The commercial pathway for us is the following one. We have our sensors, we have this ability to map the brain and actually to know and form where to actually position electrodes for recording and stimulation. And we have identified the pipelines of market that allows us to penetrate the end goal, neuromodulation, but by de-risking that approach. We start with research applications. So we have actually first revenues this year where we collaborate with research organizations and other startups as well to develop electrodes for their own devices. Next year, we are planning to focus on intraoperative electrodes and commercialize the first product there, which will help for tumor resection. Then we have the field of epilepsy monitoring, and then neuromodulation finally. Across this pipeline, we have multiple partners that we're already engaging with, partners with who we're in discussions for different projects as well. And as you can see, it is really made to de-risk the process where we actually start with non-regulated environments, then following environments and for intraoperative and new monitoring epilepsy that are lightly regulated. I will say lightly because there's actually no need for human data to penetrate the market, and then neuromodulation, which is the different partners. So far, we have created the company about 4 years ago now. We have demonstrated a lot of the technology fundamentals, the freedom to operate on the patents, and really we are targeting now more of the developments and commercial strategy with the different partners. We are still planning to do first-in-human studies, and then this will mainly do for us the support for the commercializations. In terms of revenues, we are looking at, again, these different pipelines and looking at research first as the first stream of revenues for this year, and then growing from there the surgical electrodes and then neuromodulation building up over time. Overall, when you think about brain-machine interface, when you think about neuromodulation, when you think about neurodiagnostic in general, you are actually talking about the fastest growing field in medical devices, a market expected to be $19 billion by 2026. And really our strategy there is to have our electrodes and our smart implants at the core of every of these procedures and neuromodulation device. Think about it like the Intel Insight model, where every chip is in our microwave, fridge, computers, phone. Then now imagine every implant in the world having our fine resolution sensors that allow them to actually do the work that they're supposed to do. In terms of competitions, we are separating ourselves from the main players out there that have been there for sometimes decades by providing a much higher precision for recording and simulation, and by focusing on the data-driven approach that allows us to map and do proper neuromodulation. The team behind, of course, that will not happen if we had some of the brightest people, I think, on this planet, in my opinion. We have spread our net to the US as well as Australia to work with some of the leaders in the field. We are talking to some of the people that have sold new implants in the past, that are implanted implants on a weekly basis. We're really very proud of our team. And I guess I'm here today with you because we're doing a seed round. This seed round we are in discussion with strategics to actually cover part of it, or potentially all of it. We will see how the discussion goes. That will be for potential acquisition down the line. But we are also looking for, of course, investment from other investors. And that will help us with our FDA clearance for the first product, and basically bringing our first clinical product, which are specific electrodes, into market. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I would love to connect at our booth or by email following that presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Pierre. That team slide you put up there kind of makes Wendy, Kim, and I collaboration look rather pedestrian. That's a tremendous team across the North America and the globe that you've built. So congratulations on that. Okay, I won't say final presentation for this session, but prefer to think of it as the anchor leg of this innovation race is Axolotl Biosciences. Presenting today will be their CEO, Dr. Stephanie Willarth. All over to you, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And let me just get my slides up. And thanks to Life Sciences BC for hosting this and for inviting us to our company. Can everyone see my slides okay?
You're good to go.
Awesome. Great. So thanks. As Rob mentioned, I'm the CEO of Axolotl Biosciences, which is a Victoria-based biotechnology company that we spun out of my research lab at the University of Victoria in March 2020. So it costs on average $1.3 billion and takes 16 years to produce a drug that has an 88% chance of failing at clinical trials. And where Axolotl comes in is that we develop superior quality bioinks for 3D printing human tissue models, which make research and drug discovery easier than ever by saving time, resources, and overall costs. Our current initial bioink product called Tissue Print has been in beta with 10 different academic groups, as you can see here, ranging from Canada to the United States. And we also have our product in beta testing with 8 different companies, including Bioprosthetics, Cellink, one of the world's largest suppliers of bioprinters, Brinter, as well as Stem Cell Technologies. So for those of you who, I think most people are familiar with traditional 3D printing, the way that 3D bioprinting is different is that instead of extruding a plastic filament in the printing process, in this case, you need a specialized bioink designed to maximize cell viability as well as function. And my research group's expertise was in developing methods for bioprinting stem cell-derived cells, which are very delicate, and they would often struggle to survive during the printing process, which can be very harsh. Current commercial bioink formulations have been mainly focused on printability as opposed to accounting for the cell sensitivity. And as a result, oftentimes the structures that are bioprinted don't actually accurately replicate the structures found in. And as such, while there's a lot of different bioprinting companies out there that make printers, there's a much more limited selection of bioinks currently on the market. So our first product, which is currently in a soft commercial launch, we have converted some of our beta testers to customers, is called Tissue Print. And it's a research-grade bioink that will generate stable and reproducible 3D structures that you can culture for over a month. And in fact, we've cultured our neural constructs for up to 60 days. And so this ink both enables the cells to survive with high rates of viability, as well as enables differentiation of stem cells into tissues that resemble those found in the human body. It's easy to use, cost-effective, and we've optimized it for work with multiple bioprinters. Our initial publication detailing one of our tissue print formulations was selected as a method of the year in the journal ACS Biomaterials Science and Engineering. We've published 9 papers using different formulations of tissue print for printing a wide variety of functional tissues, including tissues that resemble the brain, the spinal cord, as well as an interesting glioblastoma tumor model. And if you like, I'll post these slides to our booth if you would like to read some of our papers as well. So to give you an idea of the total addressable market, the global 3D bioprinting market was $650 million in 2019 and has a compound annual growth rate of 20.4%. And this is mainly being driven by advances to both bioprinters as their cost goes down, as well as in biomaterials that can be used as bioinks. And in fact, the living cells segment of the bioprinting market is expected to have the largest share of this market by 2024. In terms of who's buying bioink, North America is the largest market with almost a third of the global bioprinting market. And so our bioinks serve as an essential reagent to enable a wide variety of users to bioprint these human tissue models. In terms of what we currently do, as you saw, we had a large number of beta testers. We currently ship 75 mils of bioink a month to labs all around the globe, including Europe, as well as Asia, including our North American partners. 60% of our beta testers have reordered our product or converted into customers, and 90% of our beta testers have confirmed interest in testing our future products, as well as using tissue print to complete their research studies. For example, Dr. Karen Chung, who's at the University of British Columbia, said, "Our tissue print bioink has been working well for our lab and is providing us with the opportunity to create a spinal cord injury model. And for this, thank you." On the other side of the slide, you can see that tissue print has been used to print a wide variety of different tissues from human cells. While our initial studies that came out of the Willerth lab had focused on printing functional neural tissues, our collaborators have printed cardiac cells, testy organoids, as well as human osteoblasts that resembled functional bone, in addition to our cancer models as well. In terms of our business plan, we currently sell 2 varieties of tissue print, a low viscosity version that we've priced at 500 Canadian for 5 mils, and a high viscosity version, which is compatible with the cell-ink bioprinters, which they currently have, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 of them deployed worldwide. That's been optimized specifically to work with that system. And you can see tissue print here in the slide. Our current gross margin is 94%, and our cost of goods is $4 per mil. We currently rent wet lab space from the University of Victoria, and we have a capacity currently to produce up to 1 liter of bioink per month, which would generate potential revenues of around $45,000. Currently, with this raise, we're looking to raise $5 million US that would enable us to move off campus and alleviate some of these capacity constraints, both with regard to production of our inks for commercial cell, as well as to do research and development on our future bioinks. So in terms of our journey, as I mentioned, we incorporated in March of 2020, and we've been doing R&D on our second product. The patent pending brain print was started in January 2020, and this is currently supported by funding from Innovate BC. We've also been doing significant amounts of quality control testing, and we recently received funding to develop our third product, a heart print bioink that will be used to print cardiac models. We plan on launching full-fledged commercial sale of tissue print in April 2022, and we are in talks with multiple companies about distribution agreements to enable tissue print to be sold worldwide. We hope to launch brain print by the end of this year, and also continue beta testing heart print as well, with the aim to launch that in June 2023. As for myself, as I mentioned, I'm currently a full professor in Canada Research Chair at the University of Victoria, and I was recently elected to the Royal Society of Canada. I've published 82 papers, including, I think, 20-something in the field of 3D bioprinting. And in managing my lab, I've raised over $30 million in grant funding to date. My co-founders were two of my former students, Dr. Laura de la Vega, who completed her PhD with me, and she's co-author on, I think, 5 of our tissue print publications. And she also completed my tax fellowship at Aspect Biosystems. Partially, our raise would also enable us to bring her on full time. And Lila Abel-Seth is another one of my students who completed her master's in engineering at UCLA, and she's also co-author on several of the tissue print publications. In terms of funding for development, on the Willerth Lab side, we raised $1.6 million in grant funding that enabled the development of tissue print and brain print. And we do have some runway both on the Willerth Lab side as well as on the axolotl side to continue with our projects through the end of this year. And in terms of our initial seed raise that we're currently in the process of doing, the idea is to source a facility here in Victoria where we can spend full time doing production of tissue print for commercial sale, along with the development of brain print and heart print, as well as work towards some of these tissue models for drug screenings. We also will be hiring some senior staff as well to fully complement our current team, which is 7 full-time staff. With that, thank you for listening, and you can scan our QR code. And I also would recommend checking out all of our social media, as our biomedical engineering intern, Anna, does an amazing job with them. And thank you again for your time, and to Sciences BC and Amplitude for hosting this event.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And also, I just want to pass my thanks again to Catalina, to Tom, Manjari, and Pierre for a great theme and a great series of sessions. With that, thanks everybody for your time, and I will turn it back to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Rob. Excellent moderating. Congratulations to all of our presenters on your excellent pitches. Nanosticks, Lumeka, and I'm very sorry for not acknowledging that you were in Saskatchewan. Huge apologies. I'll never make that mistake again. Kubresa, Neurora, and Axolotl. Fantastic innovation, super exciting to see. And again, thank you to Rob for introducing each speaker. A reminder to check out our digital company guide. The LSBC team has put together fantastic summaries on the presenting companies, which will which profiles them really well. And we encourage you to reach out to the companies either through the platform or through their website or just directly. As you can see, there's some amazing innovation underway that we just learned about. Our next session is going to start in about 10 minutes, where we're going to have another group of companies that are going to present from Western Canada. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you to Amplitude for being the presenting sponsor. And we hope you'll join us in the next session.